So imagine your beloved football club, goes totally bankrupt tomorrow, but the guy who authorized all those disastrous transfers doesn't lose a single dime of his own money.
Yeah, it's wild, but that is the actual reality for thousands of clubs globally.
Right, and welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking a document titled Dueños de Clubes, or Club Owners. Our mission today is to really dissect this quiet, high-stakes war over global football governance.
Basically, the battle between traditional community ownership and, well, corporate investment.
Exactly. I like to think of the traditional model as like a community garden where everyone gets to vote on what to plant, versus the new model, which is more like a corporate farm where decisions are
Right.
just made by the biggest shareholders.
That's a great way to put it. And that community garden model, the civil association, that's the historical baseline. We see it deeply rooted in Latin America, especially Argentina, and for several European giants too.
Okay, so how does that actually work on a functional level? Because it sounds incredibly romantic, right?
Yeah.
Like the absolute purest form of sports.
Yeah. Well, they operate as nonprofits. The fans, who are called socios, pay a membership fee. And it's a strict democracy. One member equals one vote for the president and the board.
Which sounds amazing until,
Yeah.
a fan-elected president is just terrible at math.
Exactly. And that is the defining structural flaw, because all profits have to be reinvested into the club, like for infrastructure or youth teams. Leaders aren't putting up their own equity to fund operations.
Wait, so the leaders are essentially gambling with house money.
Yeah, pretty much. If a president overspends just to win a re-election campaign and the club defaults, their personal bank account is completely untouched.
Wow, so the club itself takes the hit,
Mhm.
which I assume means the actual physical assets, like maybe the historic stadium,
Yeah.
end up right on the chopping block.
Right, to pay off creditors, you rely on a president's passion instead of their wallet, which inevitably creates this massive financial vacuum when debts pile up.
And private equity naturally saw that vacuum, right? I mean, if
Right.
traditional clubs are drowning in debt because of these governance flaws, the obvious pivot is the corporate model.
Yes, sports limited companies, or SIDs. We've watched this model completely transform the Premier League, Liga MX, and recently the Brasileirão.
So under this SAD structure, the club just becomes a regular commercial enterprise.
Basically, voting power shifts from that democratic one-member, one-vote system to a plutocracy, meaning one share literally equals one vote.
Right, so fans completely lose their voting power, and the primary goal shifts to financial sustainability, brand value, and, paying dividends to investors.
Exactly. But there's a massive trade-off here. These clubs face strict corporate fiscal controls. If the business fails, the shareholders absorb the financial losses, not the community.
Wait, hold on. If that's true, why do we still see corporate-owned clubs going into administration and punishing fans with, point deductions?
Because the financial risk is privatized, it's not magically eliminated. Commercial bankruptcy laws mean investors only lose their injected capital.
So their shares just go to zero.
Right. The club as an entity might face administration, but the community members aren't legally forced to bail out a nonprofit's debt to save their institution. The SAD model isolates that financial blast radius strictly to the shareholders' balance sheets.
Okay, so it's a choice between community clubs risking their historic stadiums or corporate clubs risking commercial ruin. Is there any middle ground?
Actually, yes. Germany engineered this fascinating structural loophole with the 50+1 rule.
Oh, right, where they basically split the atom.
Yeah, corporations can manage the professional football operations, bringing in that necessary private capital. But the parent civil association, meaning the fans must legally retain at least 50% plus one vote of the decision-making rights.
That is brilliant. It's essentially a dual-class stock structure, kind of like how tech founders at Meta or Google keep voting control even with outside cash.
Exactly. You get the financial muscle of a corporation, but a single foreign investor can never force through a wildly unpopular decision like moving the stadium because the fans hold structural veto power.
Which makes this an incredible case study in governance for anyone, really, even if you don't follow the sport. It asks this universal question of how you balance preserving a community's cultural identity with the cold demand for economic efficiency.
It truly is fundamentally about who gets to own community culture.
It is. But here is something to mull over that the document barely scratches.
Oh.
We are currently debating community nonprofits versus private corporations,
Right.
right?
Right.
Well, what happens when the buyer isn't a corporation but an entire nation state?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. As sovereign wealth funds continue purchasing clubs, treating them as geopolitical assets rather than just profit-driven businesses, will the traditional democratic model eventually go totally extinct? It makes you wonder if fans will literally be forced to buy corporate stock just to have a voice in their own community's culture.